Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into something that is literally a double-edged sword. The absolute economic necessity of industrialization and, well, its severe ecological footprint. We're going to use India as our prime case study today to see exactly how replacing hand tools with machines fundamentally transforms an entire economy. But we're also going to ask, at what cost? Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with industry as the engine of growth. Move on to two inseparable sectors. Look at roadblocks to development, face the environmental toll, and finally, discuss protecting the ecosystem.
All right, let's kick things off with part one, industry as the engine of growth.
Okay, so the sheer scale of the economic impact here is just massive. By taking raw materials and actually adding value to them through manufacturing and processing, the secondary sector contributes a staggering 27% to India's gross domestic product. 27%! It essentially allows a developing nation to take its vast manpower, its natural resources, heck, even turning scraps and waste material into highly valuable goods. This is absolutely crucial because it diversifies exports. It shifts a country away from just scraping by selling low-value primary products towards selling highly profitable manufactured goods. But, it's not just about capital, right? It's about people. The industrial sector is an absolute lifeline, employing around 26% of the workforce. That's a quarter of the working population. It provides everything from low-skilled day labor to highly specialized technical jobs. And by doing that, it actively reduces the heavy and often totally unsustainable reliance on the agricultural sector for people to just make a living.
Which brings us perfectly to part two inseparable sectors.
It's so easy to picture factories and farms as total opposites, like concrete versus green fields, right? But honestly, they are entirely symbiotic. Think of it like this. Agriculture is the backbone. It feeds the industrial workers and supplies the essential raw materials for agro-based industries, things like jute, cotton, and tea. Plus, farming generates capital and creates this massive consumer market for industrial goods. Then, on the flip side, industry is the energy of the economy. It supplies the tractors, the chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and the critical infrastructure like irrigation networks and transport that farming desperately needs to be efficient. On top of that, industry actually steps in to absorb surplus labor from agriculture, which solves the huge problem of hidden unemployment. You simply cannot develop one without the other. They are totally linked.
All right, moving on to Section 3, roadblocks to development.
Now, this economic engine we've been talking about, it doesn't always run smoothly. There are objective, very real roadblocks actively stalling growth. First off, we see a significant lack of basic infrastructure. Think inadequate rail and road networks in certain regions. Then there's a distinct dearth of technically trained personnel who actually know how to operate sophisticated machinery. We also see really poor performance in some public sector units. This leads to what's known as industrial sickness, where capacity is severely underutilized, sometimes hovering at just 50 to 60%. And on top of all that, regional imbalances are just stark. You have states like Maharashtra and Gujarat seeing maximum industrial development, while other regions with huge potential remain, well, completely neglected. So industry is undeniably an engine of growth. It lifts millions out of poverty and builds modern nations. But we really have to pause and ask the tough question. What happens to our world when that powerful engine runs dirty?
That leads us right into Section 4, the environmental toll.
Look, rapid industrialization puts immense stress on the environment. That's just the reality. We're talking massive landscape defacement from mining operations, which generates mountains of waste and contaminates the soil with toxic heavy metals. Then you have rapid urbanization pushing millions into cities, severely depleting municipal water supplies and literally paving over precious croplands for housing. Deforestation is running rampant as forests are cleared for dams, factories, and raw materials, directly leading to rising temperatures and soil erosion. And of course, the constant everyday accumulation of industrial wastes from petroleum and manufacturing plants is just poisoning our land and water. And when it comes to air quality, the numbers are absolutely staggering. Get this, vehicular pollution alone accounts for up to 80% of the air pollution in major metropolises. 80%. It's an alarming rate, and it's driven by older engine technologies, endless congested traffic, and the sheer density of populations swelling around these massive industrial hubs. All of this environmental stress, it translates directly into a severe public health crisis. It's not just smog in the sky.
Particulates and ozone cause immediate, daily distress to people's eyes, nose, and throat. Chronic respiratory problems like bronchitis and asthma are directly fueled by the sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides getting pumped out of factories. And it gets scarier. Heavy metals like lead can cause devastating brain damage. This constant low-level toxicity is a grim everyday reality, but we also face the massive threat of acute disasters. Think back to tragedies like the 1984 Bhopal gas tragedy, where an accidental industrial leak claimed thousands of innocent lives.
So how do we fix this? Let's get into Section 5, Protecting the Ecosystem. Look, we can't just unindustrialize. Returning to a pre-industrial age simply isn't an option for a growing global population. So how do we actually mitigate this damage? Well, proper waste management is our very first line of defense. The absolute first major step is strict waste segregation right at the source. We have to systematically divide our refuse into distinct categories. You've got biodegradable wastes, like food scraps, then non-biodegradable wastes, which you split further into valuable recyclables, like plastics, and toxic items, like old medicines. And finally, hazardous wastes, including harsh industrial chemicals and hospital waste. Segregation is literally the only way to process and recycle effectively without cross-contaminating everything. Because there is a massive difference between careless disposal and true ecological management. Standard dumping merely hides the problem by burying solid waste in a landfill. Out of sight, out of mind, right? But composting is brilliant. It harnesses microbial activity to transform biological waste back into nutrient-rich organic manure. This adds essential carbon and nitrogen right back into the soil, drastically reducing our need for those polluting chemical fertilizers we talked about earlier.
Now, what about liquid waste? Those industrial effluents that threaten our rivers and oceans? You can't just flush them away. They must pass through 3 strict stages of treatment. First is the primary discharge, where the solid sludge is allowed to settle and is physically removed. Second is the secondary treatment, where the liquid is aerated and biological pathogens are naturally reduced by up to 90%. Finally, you have the tertiary treatment. This is where the liquid often passes through a clear quartz tube and is blasted with intense ultraviolet light. This completely destroys any remaining pathogens, ensuring the water is fully transparent, oxygenated, and totally safe for discharge.
And finally, we absolutely must clean the air before it ever leaves the smokestack. By adopting advanced, eco-friendly technical devices, industries can dramatically cut their emissions. The technology is amazing. Electrostatic and backhouse filters can directly capture an incredible 99.5% of particulate matter from power plants. Flue gas desulfurization devices, try saying that 3 times fast, can control up to 90% of sulfur dioxide emissions, and selective catalytic reduction can slash nitrogen oxide output by 80 to 90%. So the technology exists to clean up our industry. It's really just a matter of policy and actually implementing it. Ultimately, industrialization truly is the lifeblood of a modern, thriving economy. It creates wealth, jobs, and literally the infrastructure of modern life. But unless we universally adopt these critical sustainable practices, from strict waste segregation to advanced emission scrubbing, we are quite literally trading our ecosystem for our economy. The tools for balance are right in front of us. So what steps will you take to understand and advocate for this vital balance in your own community today?